Hey folks, welcome to this week's census update. Sorry we're a couple of minutes late, but we are going to give it a minute or so for folks to tune in, and then we will get started very shortly. But again, thanks so much for joining us. We'll get started very, very soon. All right, friends, we are going to go ahead and get started. We just went live for our Facebook audience. So welcome to both our Zoom and Facebook audience to this week's Texas Counts Census Update. Today is September 14th. Thanks again to my co-presenters today for joining us. First, of course, Dr. Lila Valencia from the Texas Demographic Center, and then Ms. Genesis Sanchez from the NALEO Educational Fund will be joining us today for our weekly update. I feel like I am a little off at it today since I wasn't here for our last census update, so I'm getting back into the rhythm of things. I'm very thankful to my fabulous intern Jamie for leading us 2 weeks ago. But as always, we stick to the agenda pretty much every time we meet. First and foremost, a big welcome to everyone tuning in today. I am in a little bit of disbelief how quickly the census is going to be ending, and so very thankful that you all continue to be champions of this work and continue to tune in. Then I will pass it over to Genesis. She's going to give us some census updates as well as share some really great resources. Then we'll pass it over to Lila to walk us through the self-response data, and then I'll wrap things up with just some of the things that Texas Counts is doing and ways that you can continue engaging in Get Out the Count efforts in Texas. And then of course we'll save some time at the end for any questions. You know, throughout the course of today's presentation, feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A box to raise any questions, comments, or concerns that you have. And for my Facebook friends that are joining us, feel free to use the comment section there to ask questions as well. But without further ado, I am going to go ahead and pass it over to Genesis for our updates.
Hey everybody, happy to see everybody on the call. And again, as Katie said, thank you for joining us. We are 16 days away from the end of the census, and like Katie says, it feels a little unbelievable. I know she's a little like she's coming back from vacation, but I'm also a little bit in disbelief that we have made it this far. So kudos to all of you for your hard work and for your engagement. We really, really appreciate it. Next slide. So some of what I'm sharing is some of the slides that I've shared before. It's things that are relevant, especially now with NERFU. As a reminder, here are some of the things to keep in mind when it comes to door knockers. Next slide, please. And then more information here as well. Next slide. I do want to very quickly kind of share some of the updates as it pertains to the census, but not necessarily to the operations. As many of you know and have kept abreast of, there was a lawsuit filed against the Census Bureau, or specifically against Ross. It was led by the National Urban League. And on September 5th, the court ordered that the Census Bureau are enjoined from implementing the August 3rd, 2020 replan, or allowing to be implemented any actions as a result of the shortened timelines in the August 3rd, 2020 replan, including but not limited to winding down or altering any census field operations. And yes, someone just asked, could you all link the statement in the chat? Yes, absolutely. So the court will meet on September 17th of this week to hear the plaintiff's motion. Essentially what this means is that in the areas where the Census Bureau was shortening timelines and they were planning on wrapping up a little earlier, we heard reports, for example, that in San Diego, the Bureau was going to finish door knocking on September 18th. And so that was kind of, this particular court order, I think, was motivated in general by the shortened timeline, but things like that started to really, I think, emphasize the need for some kind of court interjection. And so we're going to keep an eye on this, and hopefully it's in the National Urban League and a bunch of the other plaintiffs. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied today. In there, and like, hopefully it's a positive result is what I'm trying to say. The court orders, as we all know, right, it's a little complicated, and it always, it's hard to see how it's going to have an impact on our work. So again, keep an eye on it and let you know of anything that pertains to the work. Next slide, please. And then in addition, some good news is that on the apportion memo that went out a little earlier in the summer, a 3-judge panel blocked the Trump administration effort to erase undocumented immigrants from apportion counts. It wasn't done on constitutional grounds, but it was done on the grounds that the memo violated Congress's authority to conduct the census and the apportionment calculation. It also didn't say that the administration had to stop trying to figure out who is undocumented and who's undocumented. So again, those are things that we need to keep an eye out for. But this is really great news, right? So that we don't have to litigate this and we don't have to continue fighting this apportionment, especially once the census wraps up. Next slide. Some dates to keep in mind now that we're firmly in the middle of September. Some of the counts that we've been talking about, specifically counting transitory locations, service-based enumeration, the count of people experiencing homelessness, and of course the last day to respond to the 2020 census. So definitely keep these in mind, especially if you work with these populations. As a reminder, the mail questionnaires must be received by the Census Bureau by October 7th in order to be counted. So if you have folks who prefer to do it through the mail and through paper, please let them know they have to postmark that as soon as possible. It has to get to the Bureau by October 7th. And with increasing mail delays, we definitely want to encourage people to do it sooner rather than later. There are some dates to leverage. Tomorrow, for example, is the start of National Hispanic Heritage Month. And considering that a large population of Latinos in Texas have not responded to the census, this is a great moment to leverage. In addition, September 17th is Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. And then between September 17th and September 23rd is Constitution Week. And of course, the week prior to September 30th should be, for all of us probably on this call, should be this last momentum, this last push to ensure that we get as many people counted as possible. Next slide. And then as I think I shared this last week, but these are just some of the videos that the Census Bureau has when it comes to representing the door knockers and what to expect at the door. And then, addressing that COVID is still very much a real thing, and that, people should keep safe, and but that they still have time to respond. Next slide. In addition, as I mentioned last week, we do have some new toolkits and some just some fun collaborations. We have our back to school toolkit that has a kind of much like the Texas Counts toolkit, has messaging, images, social media, whatever you might need to push out the census. We got it there. We created a collaboration video with Broadway stars. Specifically Latino Broadway stars. And so if you want to check that out, it's here as well. We have our NERFU guidance for partners, both in English and Spanish, and then our updated census FAQs in English and Spanish. And these are really helpful if you get any kind of questions from folks and from community members, just about, those like small, minute questions that we sometimes get. I find these to be really helpful for even myself whenever I have an interview or whenever I'm talking to folks and answering questions. So feel free to use those as well. Next slide. And then I also just want to wrap up by sharing that, as many of you, NALEO will be doing voter engagement work, voter protection work as well. We know this election is very different from past elections. And so we want to make sure that we're as useful of a resource as possible. Our team internally created what they call a Latino election handbook, which kind of shows the power and potential of the Latino electorate here in the United States, and kind of where our vote is headed, and what are the issues that we're really committed to. In addition, I really want to plug our bilingual voter hotline. This acts as a voter protection hotline, as well as just a general information and resource. The number is 888 Ve y Vota. And this number is available for anybody who wants to use it, access it, share it, what have you. So if you are creating collateral and you maybe your strong suit is not Spanish, but you have a large Spanish community, please know that you can use it, include it in whatever material you're sending out, social media. We're here to act as a resource. We have fully trained staff, much like our census hotline. And so we're here and available to you for whatever you might need. And if you have any questions about that, please know that you can also contact me directly. As well, we're looking for National Voter Registration Day partners. I know it's a little difficult right now with COVID. Not a lot of us are doing in-person voter registration, but if you'd like to partner, again, we're welcome. We're open and welcome to any partners. And then lastly, I also want to share that as with Census, we definitely have a lot of swag to give out. So if you are doing those in-person voter engagement opportunities, reach out to me, let me know what you're working on, and I'd be happy to partner with you and send you some of that. So email me directly and we can get that conversation going. But if you guys have any other questions, please let me know. And then I'll also pop in some of the links into the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Genesis, for covering all of that great information. And y'all all know that NALEO has really amazing resources. So thank you for resharing those with us. And then again, if anyone does have any specific questions for Genesis, feel free to pop those in the Q&A box or in the chat box. But with that, I will now pass it over to Dr. Lila Valencia to walk us through the data.
Hello, everyone. Happy you could join us. Let me go ahead and get started with the look at the data. I have just changed this slide a little bit. It basically contains the different resources that I'll be using to present the data today. But that first link is the same link. I just want you to note that the Census Bureau has sort of reorganized some of their information. So on that particular link, you'll find the total response rates by state. You'll also find, and you have to scroll down a little bit to see all three boxes, depending on your screen size. I'm on a laptop, so I have to screen down a little bit, but you'll see one section with the total response rates by state. You'll see another section with the non-response follow-up completion by area census office map. And then you'll see the typical Census Bureau self-response map that I used to share with you on a weekly and biweekly basis. So just know the link is the same. You just have to do an extra click to get to the information that you need. And then the other links are to the rankings dashboard, to the CUNY Hard to Count map, and to the Texas Demographic Center map and dashboard. Next slide, please. So here is our self-response map. As of last week on Friday, we ended the week with a self-response of 61.3%. So that means that 61.3% of households took it upon themselves to visit the website, to phone call to the Census Bureau, or mailed back their questionnaires. So this does not include responses through enumerators. This includes only responses from households on their own. The state of Texas has a 61.3% self-response rate compared to the national response rate of 65.7. Minnesota is still in the lead, and then we are at 38th in relation to the other states in the country. So there's an estimated 97.1 million households that have responded on their own. 7.5 million of these households are in Texas. One of the changes to the way that the Census Bureau is presenting the data, specifically in the rankings dashboard, does not show the number of households that have self-responded anymore by state. They used to show that by each state. And so what we've done is just derived that figure from previous estimates that they had presented to us. And so our current estimate is that there's about 7.5 million Texas households that have self-responded. Next slide, please. Now, this is the 2020 census total response. This is going to be the first box that you find on that link. And what total response means is the total enumeration to date for the state of Texas and for the different states in the US. The total response is equal to the percent that have self-responded. So each household has done on their own the census, either through the website, by phone, or by mailing back their questionnaire, plus the percent that have been enumerated during the non-response follow-up operation by a census worker. And so that adds up to give us the total enumerated in the state. Now, the goal here before or at the end of September 30th is 100%. Clearly, if we can get there before September 30th, that would be amazing. But as of September 12th, 2020, the state of Texas is 90.1% enumerated. And so that's really good. That means, still again, Texas ranks 38th in self-response, 13th in NRFU response, which means that a lot of enumerators have been going to Texas household doors and getting responses from them in that way, which is typical of a state that is hard to count like Texas. When you look at this table, when you go to the link and you look at the table, you'll see that the states that have the higher enumerated non-response follow-up percentages are all very hard to count places. So they include Texas, they include Alaska, Wyoming, places that are very rural, that have a lot of challenges. And so that's why we're ranked 13th in that category. And then we're ranked 35 or 35th total enumerated. So that's really good. I think the last time I presented these data to you, we were ranked 41st. And so now we've gone up in ranking, but we still have over 1 million households remain to be counted. And so we've got about 2 weeks left, and we have over 1 million households. So we really, the work still remains to be done. And self-response is still the most accurate way to respond to the census. And we really want to encourage that you continue your work and your efforts, because this is really helping to boost that total response rate number, which is what's going to get us to that 100%. Next slide, please. This is the Census Bureau's non-response follow-up by area census office map. This is a map that basically looks at that percent of the workload of the non-response follow-up that has been completed by area census office. And so what we have here is all of the area census offices in the state. I have the legend a little bit covered up, but basically no area census office in the state has reached completion. So what I've done here is I've gone through, if you click on each individual area census office, you'll get that percent of the NRFU workload that has been completed for that area census office. And I've gone ahead and put it together for you in this table. It's ranked from lowest percent to highest percent. And so you can see that even though Fort Bend has it has the highest self-response rate in the state, it has a lot of work to be done in terms of non-response follow-up. So they still have some work there to do in terms of the enumerators in Fort Bend County. And Fort Bend County, of course, goes beyond just Fort Bend County and reaches into parts of the Gulf Coast and parts of South Texas, south of San Antonio, and to the southeast of San Antonio. You'll also see that Laredo has a 66.3% of that workload completed. One thing I want you to remember about Laredo, this area census office had the largest update leave universe. They had over 50,000 households that were going to be receiving their information packet from the Census Bureau through update and leave. So we really need for the Census Bureau to increase that percentage of non-response follow-up in this area, because they won't be receiving any additional information without the non-response follow-up. So we'll be keeping an eye on that area and looking to see what that means. And I'm seeing a couple of questions come in real quick. So I'm just going to pause and see what that is. So it says, Lila, when will we know, this is from Berta, when will we know if the enumeration was by proxy data or actually collected from someone in the household? Or is the 28.7% all data from individuals from a household? This would be great, but not sure if it doesn't include proxy numbers. And then there's another question. Does this completion rate for San Antonio of 90.8% mean that only 10% of households in San Antonio need to be counted? No. So what, okay, so first I'll take the latter question. The 90.8% in San Antonio means that of the non-response follow-up universe, the Census Bureau has completed 90.8% of that work. Now, that doesn't mean that 10% of households, it does mean that 10% of households still need to be counted, but what it doesn't mean is whether those households will need to be counted through a numerator. And so we can still work in those areas where we think those households are located to encourage self-response. And we also don't know if that includes all 6 follow-up visits to those universes, or if it's still in process of verification. And that leads to your other question of the proxy data. We won't know that information until after the decennial count. I don't even know if the Census Bureau will release at the local level where there has been proxy use. And so that's definitely a question that I'll need to look into a little bit more, Berta, because I don't have enough information right now to be able to answer that. But my understanding is that we won't know how many of these were by proxy at the local level, or even if an administrative record is used after after a proxy is not found, or or there is no response from that household. But thank you for that question. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is our county response rate map. And again, this is the self-response rate map. This map is looking so much better. We're seeing more and more blue parts of the state, which means that more and more counties are over that 50% mark, which of course means that fewer enumerators will be having to go door to door and doing that really tedious, laborious work that it takes to enumerate door to door. We now have 128 counties that have 50% plus response rates. That's over 50% of the 254 counties, so that's really good. We still have some counties that are really close to that. Most of these are going to be more rural located areas like Oldham County, Fisher, Sherman, and Jack. And then we have 13 counties that have met or surpassed their 2010 census rate. Next slide, please. And then here is the self-response rate by city. Know that you can go in and click in on your individual city to see how your city is doing. Of the 1,219 or 1,219 cities in Texas, we have 754 that have a self-response rate of over 50%. And we have 229 cities that have reached their 2010 milestones. I've been highlighting them and tagging them on social media so that city officials are able to see when they reach that milestone. Cities that are close to meeting that 2010 mark include Hillcrest, or that are really close to meeting it include Hillcrest, Willow Park, Anthony, Saginaw, and Anna. And again, the closer we can get to that 2010 mark, the closer and the more confident we will be that there could be a complete count in those areas, because the census enumerators don't have to knock on as many doors as they would need to otherwise. So it's really important to continue to drive the self-response in the cities as well as counties. Next slide, please. And then I just want to remind you that the CUNY Hard to Count map has some additional features. But Genesis highlighted one of these last time we met. I think she pointed out where you could see the final paper questionnaire being mailed out to. This is what I have selected here is the bottom 20% self-response rates. As you can see, there are still so many parts of Texas that are ranked in the bottom 20% of self-response for the entire county. And this is at the I believe I selected this at the county level. So there's a lot of counties that still are ranked in the 20% nationally. We can see though that even some of the areas that are not in the bottom 20%, you'll notice like around the Dallas area or the San Antonio area, they're still below that 2010 response rate. So there's still room to be able to improve in terms of self-response and really try to drive that self-response to help the enumerators that are out there knocking door to door. Other views that you can get at the top, you can see the total response rate by state. And so that's the self-response plus the non-response follow-up. Or you can see the, again, the completion rate by area census office. And so just be sure that if you're looking for some of these new statistics that have been coming out, that you go to one of these resources to be able to see exactly where Texas is. Now, the Texas Demographic Center is looking at the bottom 20% responding census tracts. There is about, let me see, there's about 1,300 or 1,355 census tracts that are still in that bottom 20% of census tracts in Texas. And so that's really any census tract that has a response rate of 49.1%. It ranges from 49.1 down to 3.2%. And this is a census tract in McLennan County that I believe has an army base or a military base in that census tract. But we also have census tracts like a census tract in Webb County that has a response rate of 8%, and in Cameron County with a response rate of 10.9%. So we still have some census tracts where we need some real serious push for self-response, or we're just going to have to wait until the non-response follow-up enumerators arrive in these areas. If you're curious to know which of these census tracts are, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to share that information with you. And Katie, I think that's all I have. I'm gonna check to see, I think one more question came in, and then I'll be happy to answer any other questions. Okay, it is harder to push the non-response rate as a driver to get people counted because we don't know where to target. We don't know what areas have been enumerated and if the tract is still low in self-response but is now or are now fully counted. You're absolutely right. It is difficult to know. One thing that we can do is to start to look at those bottom 20% census tracts. And of course, that's going to be just the bottom 20% census tracts in terms of self-response. But if it's as low as about 8% or 10%, like I was mentioning before, there is still lots of work to be done in some of those areas. If, and you're absolutely right, there's going to be times where you may be targeting areas that have already gotten better response rates. And for this reason, I think it's really important to get to work really closely with your partnership specialists and the people who they have out in the field in your area to be able to get some information from them, because the data that are being published by the Census Bureau at this point are not that granular. And so it is going to be a little bit harder to understand whether your efforts are being well spent. But all I can say is that if they have a lower self-response, they're probably going to be likely to have a lower non-response follow-up completion rate as well, because these are going to be the harder to count places, and the enumerators are also having a difficult time counting these harder to count communities. So I wish I could give you more reassuring information in that regard, but I think right now the best thing to do is to look at those low responding, low self-response tracks and get with your partnership specialists and their field people to try to understand, are these the places where we really should be going? And hopefully they will be able to give you more localized information. And then Raphael asked the number or zip code of the 8% tract in Laredo. That census tract is census tract, let me see, it's 17.1. And I can definitely, get you some more information on that offline. Unless there's any other questions, that's all I've got, Katie.
Thank you so much, Lila. And again, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat box or in the comment section on Facebook. Now we are going to switch gears to some get out the count efforts and some things that Texas Counts is doing. First, I'm really excited to share this on behalf of the Communities Foundations of Texas and the Texas Counts Pooled Fund. So they, over the past few weeks, have been doing a phone bank across the state of Texas. They are currently looking for volunteers to start making phone calls to encourage folks in Texas to participate in the census. As a census caller, you'll be conducting calls in your chosen neighborhood. So if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you can call folks in that region. If you are in the Valley, you can call folks in your community. Just depending on where you are in the state of Texas, they'll be able to provide you a call list to specifically call folks in your region. And then with that, they have a really quick and easy script for you to go over. And again, this is just calling households to remind them to fill out the census questionnaire. It's really easy to get started. They use this program called Shift Smart, and then you can make these phone calls really at any time between, I think it's 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So if you are interested in supporting these efforts, and again, just another really great way for you to be able to lead get out the count efforts in your community, I highly encourage you to sign up. I took a screenshot directly from the website of what that sign up form looks like. You can see they don't need too much information. The link is right there. We'll make sure we share that again. But if you do have some time and capacity to make a couple of phone calls or a lot of phone calls in your area, this is another really great way to engage and get out the count efforts. If you do have any questions, I think y'all are familiar with Angela, but her email is right there at the bottom. It's abroyles@cftexas.org. In addition to that amazing phone bank, you know that Texas Counts has our toolkit that we are continuing to update. As you can see, we have a lot of really great social media resources and email templates depending on what you're looking for. This week, we are finally starting our counting down the days graphics. So if you are interested in kind of having a countdown on your social media feed, know that we have all of the days leading up until the end of the census currently loaded in our toolkit. Again, it was linked on the previous slide. So these are what we are sharing out this week. We are excited. I know I've been alluding to this, but we're finally at the time where we can start sharing them out. We will be creating some get out the count as well as get out the vote graphics as well to make sure, one, that our communities are counted, but two, they're also registering to vote and making sure their voices are heard at the poll. So keep an eye out for that. But again, this week we are officially starting our countdown graphics, and you can access those at our toolkit. You can actually get there through the website if you don't have the link handy. And you can also start reminding our communities that we only have a few days left to respond to the 2020 census. In addition to that, you know that we've been doing a couple of different things at Texas Counts to continue to engage folks and get out the count efforts. That being our Texas Counts Town Hall, of course, folks joining us today right now for our census update, and then one of our newest things, which is our outreach hour. More specifically, oops, and I forgot, apologies. I did want to go through some of the things that are happening this week. And one of those things is our Texas Counts group subcommittee call. We had one of these, I can't believe it, a month ago, and we are reconvening folks again this Wednesday. If you are interested in engaging with folks from different sectors regarding their Get Out the Count efforts in their communities, or if you're just kind of wanting a place to connect with others, I highly encourage you to join our Texas Counts group subcommittee call. That's going to be this Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central. Again, I'll make sure y'all have access to these links. This is very informal. Typically, we just share kind of what's going on with the census in Texas, and then we leave time just for discussion and allowing folks to get kind of ideas around any challenges or best practices. I imagine part of our conversation on Wednesday is really going to be around what our final push is going to look like with the 2020 census. In addition, on Friday, we will be doing another one of our Texas Counts outreach hours. I'm not sure you have been able to tune into one of these yet, but really they've been a lot of fun. I believe this is going to be our 4th week doing our outreach hour. And basically what that means is that we are just offering folks a time and space to really engage in outreach efforts. They're typically themed. We've done next door. We've talked about texting. We've done phone banking as well. This week we'll be focusing on another Get Out the Count tactic that folks can use. Again, we'll kind of go over those skills, provide you with really easy to use materials and collateral, and then we kind of just let you off in terms of letting you engage with your community. So if you're curious and want to attend, I highly encourage you to join us this Friday at noon. And then the last kind of big update, you know that we have been doing our census updates every other Monday. And so next week, we will not have a census update call, but we will have a Texas Counts town hall at the same time, 12 p.m. Central. Again, the link is there. I'm really excited because this is when we're really going to start kicking off our, oops, I put Get Out the Vote twice, our Get Out the Count and Get Out the Vote content on Monday. So if you are curious about how to make that pivot and start really engaging folks in both of these really important ways to participate in our democracy, I highly encourage you to join us again next Monday. But with that, for our census update, we will be back again the last few days of this 2020 census. So we'll be back again on September 28th. So we look forward to you joining us for this kind of last conversation while the census season is still very much up and running and live. Of course, if you all have any questions or comments, you can always email me. And then I always also have the email addresses for Lila and Genesis as well. But from Texas Counts, again, we have a lot of really fun ways to connect and engage. And please let us know if there are any specific types of materials or collateral that you all are interested in seeing. We're very excited to help you. We're excited to create those for you and support your Get Out the Count efforts in these last remaining days of the census. But with that, I am going to pause to see if we do have any other questions, comments, or concerns. I think we have a couple of things in our chat box, so I will stop talking and we'll start fielding those questions and comments. Bertha shares, our local PS people are telling us to quit pushing the September 10th per their regional leadership. I shared that we should continue to push this end date until the Bureau says they have extended it. Are other local government areas not pushing the September 30th date? This is a great point to raise. Bertha, on behalf of Texas Counts, we are still very much, until we get here otherwise, we're continuing to push the September 30th deadline. I know there is a lot of things kind of currently up in the air. Genesis, Lila, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts or comments around that.
Yeah, this is a great question. I would say, I think, and I'll follow this question by also trying to address Karen's question. that at least for us, it can be very difficult to, share messaging where we're talking about a September 30th date, but it might change, but it might be this. And I think since there's already been changes, it's a little difficult to not push the September 30th date, because I think worst case scenario, the census continues and then people who haven't been counted still have an opportunity to be counted. I think that's kind of where my perspective is right now. In addition to the question that Karen asked, how are you handling the fact that there is an ongoing litigation and a TRO in place? I would say from my perspective, and Katie and Nyla, please, jump in. I haven't gotten too many questions about the litigation and the TRO. I think they haven't really made as many waves here in the state. And so my perspective has been to not spend too much time on that and rather continue to encourage people to participate in the census, because the litigation is confusing. It's a lot of back and forth. And many times, at least with media partners, for example, they themselves are not well educated on the subject. So it becomes difficult to try to have that conversation. So I think we've returned to the emphasis on getting everybody counted and ensuring that, at least from my perspective too, working with Latino communities, that has been like at the forefront, especially since the last remaining people to count in the state are predominantly people of color. I don't know if Katie or Lila, if you want to add anything to that.
I agree 100% with what you said, Genesis. And like I said, Texas Counts is currently, we're continuing to push that September 30th deadline to make sure our communities are counted. But we are very much following what is going on, and of course want to keep you all updated. So when we do get more information, we'll continue to share it out. But with that, I mean, I think everyone on this call knows that we have all been very adaptable throughout this entire census season. And so we're as we closely monitor what's happening, again, pushing the September 30th deadline, but we are prepared to continue pushing the census message if it goes past, if folks can still respond to the census, or if we're still doing non-response follow-up past that date. So I hope that that's helpful in terms of answering that question. But again, we'll continue to keep folks updated in terms of what we're hearing and what kind of our plans moving forward are.
And I think for me, the only thing I would add is that in terms of data quality, and Berta, you highlighted this with the question on proxies and things of that nature. In terms of data quality, the best response is going to be self-response. And so if we can continue to motivate and encourage self-response through September 30th, the more self-response we have by that day, even if it were to get extended, the better, right? And so, whatever we can do to push that self-response, I think it would be the best use of our efforts right now, because we really want to encourage that more accurate data made available to the Census Bureau to be able to really accurately inform all of the important uses that go with the census.
Great point, Lila, and I agree, Bertha. Self-response is definitely key during this time. So again, we know our households can still respond online, by phone, or by mail. And I don't think that we have any other additional questions or comments. So I am going to pause for a brief second if anyone is trying to type something in. But if not, we will go ahead and close out this week's census update. Great. Well, thank you everyone again for joining us for this week's census update call. Again, we'll send out a follow-up email with all of the great links, resources, and events that we shared on today's call. But with that, thank you again for continuing to lead Get Out the Count efforts in your community. We are forever thankful and grateful for all of the amazing work you do. If you need anything, again, our email addresses are here. Don't feel free to reach out at any time. But with that, we look forward to connecting with you all very soon. Stay safe and well, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.